Welcome to another Prehistoric React. Today, we're diving into some forgotten giants. How many of these do you recognize? Enjoy! We're just about to start the next video. We have, from Extinctzoo, the largest animals you've never heard of. Well, I mean, I guess I am a giant cat girl, you know what I mean? So I'm probably gonna be in this video. Just giving you guys the heads up. Next time my brother says, come over, I need help, I will run from him. Noted. Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, we watched, I think it was like underwater fossils, something like that. So I watched one before from Extinctzoo, and people liked it before. So giant, I said what I said. Okay, we got a squid coming up first. Let's go.
Fierce, giant, and extinct. When I say those three words, what do people typically think of?
Okay, I'm not extinct though. Silence, I am giant, thank you.
Well, they first may picture a dinosaur of some sorts, perhaps a T-Rex or some kind of sauropod. But then if I say no dinosaurs, one then might move on to a giant pterosaur, mosasaur, croc, megashark.
Okay, I probably would not have thought whale, but now that I saw a picture whale, yeah.
A giant from the Ice Age, etc., etc. The point is, when we talk about giant prehistoric animals, there are a few that pretty much always come to mind, leading to documentaries and movies frequently featuring the same type of animals on repeat. However, because of this focus, certain giants on Earth throughout the years have been found which simply have fallen to the sidelines, overshadowed again by the quote-unquote fan favorites. And personally, I think these forgotten faces need a little love too, as if you really look through history, you'll find that there are many giants walking about that most people have never heard of, let alone seen. And I'm not talking about unknown animals that belong to—
Pen! What the? Pen! You know Rob can delete your messages, right? What the hello?
Groups that are already well known for being huge. Instead, we're going to be taking a look at animals that—
Mods, timeout, Tantra, thank you.
That, hopefully, you didn't know existed in nearly any sense of the word. As seen with this specimen, now known as the Beast of Lesotho. If you have heard of this before, your paleo lore is king-like. And perhaps
I wish my paleo lore was king-like. Sag, couldn't be me.
you don't need even to watch this video, but stick around anyway. Now, for everyone else, what exactly is the Beast of Lesotho? Well, an amphibian like no other, that's what. For hundreds of millions of years, from the
It's it reminds me, wait, there's a Monster Hunter thing that has the same, what is it called? Oh my god, it's gonna mess me up. I'm gonna think about it. But he's kind of just a little guy. Oh, I forgot the name of it. French toast.
Carboniferous all the way up to the Cretaceous, one could say that the realm of amphibians was pretty much dominated by just one group, the Temnospondyli, who have been found all over the world and came in virtually every shape.
Nibblesnarf. Thank you. I knew I recognized the face. It's just a Nibblesnarf, guys. I don't speak 4 foot. Can you translate for me, band? Why is bro built just like me? A thin, long line. Dang, calling yourself out. Oh, that's the other thing about love those terms. But yeah, like it's the Nibblesnarf. Except it's aquatic, because I don't think Nibblesnarf is aquatic.
In size, with some being teeny tiny and others absolutely giant. And so this order is extremely diverse, with one way of thinking about them is that they're pretty much the mammal equivalent of the placentals. So
they're just little guys.
Unsurprisingly, there are multiple large families that made up the Temnospondyli. And one of them was the Brachiopidae, a family which specifically emerged during the final days of the Permian, and were quite successful up until the Jurassic. The members of this group, just like the order, varied in size and location, but they were all carnivores, who are believed to have lived a lot like crocodiles, being opportunistic hunters, only restricted in diet by their size. And for many years, amphibians from this family were regarded as having been small to medium-sized, not massive. Until that is, a fragmented piece of a jaw was found in South Africa that seems to have changed everything, as this mouthpiece was huge. Now, it has not been confirmed if it belonged to an already identified genus, or rather represents a brand new one, but either way, it has been classified to have come from a Brachiopidae. And when comparing this jaw piece to related members, we come to the conclusion that this guy might have reached 7 meters or 23 feet long. Which, for comparison, the largest amphibian alive today, the Chinese giant salamander, is only 1.8 meters or 5.6 feet long, so not even a third of the length. And the Beast of Lesotho, as it was aptly named, wasn't just long, but also ridiculously chonky and robust, having had a whopper of a mouth.
They're chonky. Oh, I love them. I love them so much already. Big lad, he's just a little guy, okay? He's just a little, no. He's a little guy. But he's, giant. Oh, Lord.
that could possibly swallow even a human-sized prey whole, and also weighed multiple tons. The body, that is, not the mouth.
3 tons? That's just his body or the whole thing? Possibly. Okay, we don't know. He's a chunky boy.
Currently, it's believed to have lived in the waterways of the Elliott Formation during the very early stages of the Jurassic, where it there might have terrorized numerous kinds of animals in need of a drink, including multiple theropods, smaller sauropodomorphs, and ornithischians, among others. And so far, it's actually the largest known carnivore from the entire formation, dinosaurs included. So much so for this being the age of dinosaurs. But with this said, I will mention that obviously the jaw piece is fragmentary, so it remains to be seen just how accurate its body size estimate is. However, even if the beast of Lesotho does turn out to be a bust, it's still fine, because we actually have other obscure giant amphibians too, such as the possibly longer, albeit lighter built, Prionosuchus, which hailed from Permian Brazil.
Yeah, that kind of looks like a crocodile alligator vibe.
Or the alligator-headed Mastodonsaurus from Triassic Europe, which could have exceeded 6 meters or 20 feet and also held a more robust build, and made a great living by feeding on large fish as well as others of its own kind, seeing that evidence for cannibalism amongst this 2-ton-plus creature is very much known of. So the next time a show or documentary wants to make a certain area come off as a bit horrifying, I say we go with a giant amphibian. They're just that dang cool.
He's not horrifying, he's kind of cute looking. He's so cute.
And you know what else is cool? A giant animal that looks like a dinosaur, but wasn't. And is something most people have never heard of before. And so, what am I talking about? Well, none other than the Silosuchus, of course. Now, if you're an avid watcher, you might remember this guy, but I still feel like this is a relatively unknown creature on the grand scale of things. Which is honestly shocking when you realize that this was the largest animal to ever stand on 2 legs that was not a dinosaur. And yes, it can be hard to believe that this was in fact not a dinosaur, but it really wasn't. Instead, what you're looking at is a type of popsauroid, who were essentially an advanced clade of pseudopseuchians that were one of the Earth's most abundant animals during various parts of the Triassic, and are generally known for having been a bit unusual.
Yeah, he's a bit he's kind of built a little different. Yeah, he's a little funky.
With some having sails, others being robust quadrupeds, and then some, like the Silosuchus, walking around on 2 legs. The Silosuchus specifically belonged to the Papasaur family, the Shuvasaurus.
Did you say the Papasaur? Okay. I love these dinosaur names that I can't pronounce. They're so quirky. Except when they slowly chase you around all day on a smile when you have nowhere to run. Huh?
And perhaps not shockingly, it was its largest member, as well as being one of the largest non-dinosaur archosaurs of all time, as specimens show signs of getting up to 10 meters, or 33 feet in length, which, by the way, is longer than your average fully grown Allosaurus. And again, just to reiterate, this was not a theropod. And what makes this animal even more unusual is that despite resembling a megatheropod, which would thus make you assume that it ate meat, was really just a friendly giant, well, as far as taste buds go, as it was a beaked, toothless herbivore that grazed from trees, sort of like a 2-legged sauropod. And coincidentally, it actually lived alongside sauropods too, or at least sauropodomorphs, as this beast hailed from the Triassic Extinctzoo Formation of Argentina, which was home to multiple dinosaurs, yet none were absolute giants just yet, leading to the Silosuchus likely being the largest animal within the environment. And though much more famous, I should mention that its more carnivorous relatives could also be equally massive, as you did have pseudopseuchians like the Silosuchus, which were just as long, but a tad bit more toothy and angry, probably specializing in feeding upon multi-ton sauropodomorphs. In fact, it even seems that the Silosuchus might have been the biggest terrestrial predator ever, discounting dinosaurs.
See, compared to the other guys, these guys look a little funky. The Papasaur and the Mawsonia. Why you guys like this? We got your ancestor. Are you a lizard mom? Oh my god. Scientists given complex names to justify their tenure with a British public named research ship Bodie McBoatface. But we love that for them because then I could pronounce those.
And the largest fully land predator to walk on 4 legs. And so, given its attributes, it's not that surprising that it recently even got its own Hollywood debut in the movie 65. But I should mention that it didn't actually really live 65 million years ago, as the movie title would have you believe. Rather, like the Silosuchus, it lived during the late Triassic. But you know what is still waiting for its shot to being a movie's big bad? A creature.
This looks like Subnautica! Go back! I like the Subnautica view. They're friend-shaped. Why is it shooting water out of its nose? Is it laughing? Okay.
That I think would make for a great Jaws replacement, the Nothosaurus. this was just one member of the often forgotten about order of marine reptiles, which were aptly named the Nothosaurs, and who lived all across the
Nothosaurus. Okay.
world's oceans for much of the Triassic period. And they were in many ways superficially similar to the plesiosaurs, having long body plans, elongated necks, forelimbs, and gracile builds.
Okay.
And typically they even shared a similar diet, with many members using needle-like teeth to catch fish, amongst other similar animals. Yet, for the most part, they've
Teeth to catch fish. Yes, yes. I was watching cod while drinking coffee. Yeah, well, if it's a defense mechanism underwater, I'm confused. Unless it's above water. Yeah, this I could see being this, or the other one with the really, really long neck. Love this guy was actually in the Jurassic franchise, but the Kemp Cretaceous series did not need tier products. Sag. Funky looking guys. They're a little quirky. They kind of like, they have like the mouth of like, want to know how I got these scars? Like, it's a little wide. Just a little bit. A little crocodile alligator-esque, you know what I mean?
remained much more unknown to the general public than their distant relatives. And I think this has something to do with the plesiosaurs being much larger, as typically Nothosaurs weren't that big, usually maxing out to 2 meters or 6.5 feet. So large enough to give you a heart
Not too big, 6.5 feet, okay.
attack in the water, but probably not large enough to the point that it would have actually bothered you. However, this notion about their size has slowly started to change after the discovery of massive specimens which hailed from Triassic China and Europe. And these new specimens, often made up of portions of the face and varying teeth, show that two species, Nothosaurus giganteus and Gengi, could measure up to 7 meters or 23 feet long, and were structurally much more robust than their fellow kin, leading researchers to believe that fish wasn't the only grub that these species were restricted to. In the case of the Gengi specimen, it's even thought that the current estimates are too low, and that it really might have been able to reach greater lengths.
To small cats like he was giant. No, like comparing it to the 33-foot one, Rom. That was the joke. 6'5", totally normal size. No, it's not normal size. That's giant. Not compared to the 33-foot one, but what the?
Now, admittedly, we have been kind of spoiled in the realm of marine giants, thanks to the likes of the Megalodon or predatory whales. But don't forget, even at 7 meters, the Nothosaurus is one of the largest marine predators that wasn't a whale, mosasaur, plesiosaur, ichthyosaur, or shark. And that might sound like quite the list of exclusions, but remember just how many groups have lived in the ocean. And what makes the Nothosaurus a little bit more crazy is that unlike its lookalike, the plesiosaurs, it was apparently a semi-aquatic creature that you could find not only in the water, but also lurking on the beaches. So if you don't mind sharing the sand with a predator longer than a tiger shark, which also has a face like this, then the Nothosaurus might just be the animal for you. And like I said, the Nothosaurus hailed from the Triassic period, which, just like a few others talked about so far. And so, I would say that the Triassic as a whole has gone somewhat under the radar when it comes to giants, as it had more than just a few. And amongst the lot, there was one terrestrial tank that is almost never talked about, despite it possibly being the largest land animal ever once you exclude dinosaurs, proboscideans, and rhinos. And again, almost no one knows about it. And this
Yeah, I've never seen this thing. Kind of looks like a hippo without ears, kinda.
was the Lisowicia. Now, a partial reason to why it's so unknown is that relative to many other genera, it was only recently discovered, or at least only described, with that happening only in 2019. However, the bones belonging to it were actually unearthed a bit earlier, back in
That's the size of the bone. It looks giant. It's humerus? That looks giant.
2006, after researchers in Poland found a variety of different bones outside the village of Lisowicia. And these bones were massive, and were of such stature that at first the scientists assumed that they could only have once belonged to a large sauropodomorph. Yet after they found over 1,000 more bones, this time with pieces of skull material, they understood that in reality, they'd stumbled upon a new kind of dicynodont, making it a member of the extinct Animodontiaclade. And, by the way, non-mammalian synapsid at that. With this said, this group had been a long-known staple of the Triassic, and large genera were already known from it, such as the Ischigualastia, a genus, unsurprisingly from the Ischigualasta Formation of Argentina, which I previously mentioned. And this genus could weigh up to 1 ton and stand nearly as tall as a person.
Dang.
Yet the Lisowicia was on a completely different level, making all those before it appear small, with their hips alone standing at over...
Yeah, I have this kind of aura that, things before me just appear small. Should I have Disney Star Wars? It's kind of cute looking. It's got like soft features, and then it's like it has like this beak looking thing at the front.
2.6 meters or 8.5 feet tall, while its body stretched out for over 4.5 meters or 15 feet. And that's the actual body, by the way, not including the tail. seeing that, well, it almost didn't have one, being just pretty much pure mass. And since it was essentially an oversized blob, its bones were absurdly robust in construction as well, which altogether put the Lisowicia at possibly 9 tons in weight, making it on par with modern
9 tons? What the? He's literally built like a beef Wellington. Like literally. What the?
day elephants, and even heavier than some of the most famous dinosaurs, such as the Stegosaurus, Ankylosaurus, and obviously more. And remember, this guy was from the Triassic, and so, given its size, it's also considered by some to have been the largest animal to ever walk up until the evolution of large sauropodomorphs. So, pretty metal. But fret not, any would-be time travelers, as this guy was not carnivorous. As like its fellow obscure giant, the Silosuchus, Lisowicia was a toothless beaked herbivore that used its beak to snip and chew vegetation. And we know from located coprolites, i.e. fossilized dung pieces, that most of its diet was composed of softer plants and conifers, while some of its snacks could then also be made up of woody material. But despite being a green lover, I would still recommend some heavy caution around this guy, as it was, once again, built like a literal tank, and had one thick bony head that I'm sure could dish out some pretty impressive damage if it got a hold of you. I mean, if a camel is able to essentially bite someone's head off, I certainly don't want to know what this Dicynodon could do.
A camel can bite someone's head off? Hello?
But with that said, its massive size was not a foolproof defense during the Triassic, as there are in fact signs this animal was preyed upon, with bones showing bite marks that seem to have come from another somewhat obscure giant, the Smok Wawelski, which yes, is its actual name.
Smok Wawelski. Oh, okay, interesting name.
Now this was a decently sized archosaur from the late Triassic that looked like, once again, it could have been a dinosaur, or perhaps an unusual...
I love this front view that they have right here. This is me waking up in the morning. I'm gonna be real.
Rhizodus. But for now we don't know which of these it actually was, only that it was quite big for the time, measuring 6 meters or 20 feet long, which in fact makes it the largest known predatory archosaur from Europe during not only the late Triassic, but all the way up until the early Jurassic, too. At this point, everything I've talked about has not been something that we are, and that would be a mammal, and so this could have you feeling a bit left out. And truthfully, I do think finding some obscure mammalian giants is a bit tricky, as many tend to be the same old same old. I mean, I guess you could say that the Embolotherium or the Paleoloxodon pneumaticus are both somewhat obscure giants, being 10+ ton behemoths, but one was a proboscidean and the other a rhinoceratoid, two groups which are not obscure and are very well known for being big. So, at least to me, I wouldn't say that they're that obscure. Then, there are also some other groups that I would say are composed of obscure genera, but as a whole are well known, which includes many groups from the Ice Age, like the giant ground sloths, armadillos, and so forth. Yet, with all of this said, there was one group that did stick out to me, as they aren't as famous as the Ice Age animals, and reach sizes that, frankly, even I wasn't aware of. And that would be the Brontotheridae. If I could sum up this group of extinct Paracedactyl in just a few words, it'd be the rhinos of old. However, in reality, they only superficially looked like rhinos, not being close relatives.
I'll say they're pretty close to rhino. You can see the essence of rhino.
At all. Instead, being slightly more related to horses, with their shared appearance simply coming down to convergent evolution. I guess a tank-like body, dense hide, and a large bony nose horn that you can ram things with is a pretty useful combo no matter when you evolve. And as a whole, just like the rhinos, this group became highly successful, existing for over 20 million years during the Eocene period, and expanding throughout large portions of Europe, North America, and Asia, where it's believed they lived in large herds and inhabited warm...
Yeah, not gonna lie, as cute as they look, I would not mess with any of these animals. If not rhino, why rhino-shaped? Exactly!
...moist, wooded, and forested areas. Now, those who've actually researched these animals have long known that they harbored giants. And for a good duration of time...
Unrelated, it said tapir in the background. Did you guys hear about the news that there was a really, a rare one born in a zoo? It has, like, spots and dots on it, and apparently one hasn't been born in, like, a really long time. I don't remember it, but I know it was like, really exciting news.
The known top dog, or Brontothere, was believed to have been the Megacerops.
Also, very nice beard, Megacerops, very nice.
An obscure giant amongst its own kind that stood 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet tall at the shoulder, and was over 15 feet long when you include its albeit short tail. It specifically hailed from North America during the late Eocene, and was actually one of the first terrestrial animals on the planet to reach 5 tons following the demise of the dinosaurs. And at this size, plus given the predators that were around, it's thought that adults might have been untouchable, having no natural predator. and I'm sure it certainly helped that they also look quite menacing thanks to their very distinctive double horns. But here's the real crazy part. Because despite being absolutely giant for a mammal, the Megacerops might not even have been the largest Brontothere. And it's possible that it wasn't even close, as the lesser known genera could have it beat. And that is the Embolotherium. This was in fact a very closely related genus that was actually slightly older than the Megacerops, having lived in Eocene Mongolia about 3 million years before the Megacerops would evolve. And this guy isn't exactly new, and in fact, it's always been suspected that the Embolotherium was a larger Brontothere. However, the talk about it being the largest ever only started happening after the discovery of a Titanic skull back in the mid-70s, as the partial skull was found that alone was over 4 feet or 1.2 meters long, possibly even a bit longer, making it not only greater in length than the skull of modern-day elephants, but also comparable to certain kinds of large theropod.
What is this? That is a weird looking, that looks almost human shaped. That's with a big nose. That's funky. I'm taller than 4 feet, hello?
So, it was obviously clear to the researchers that they had a monster on their hands. And though it's nigh impossible to tell just how big the specimen was without the rest of the body, some estimates have speculated that this noggin belonged to a nearly 9-ton individual that was anywhere from 18 to 20 feet long, or 5.4 to 6 meters, while standing tall enough that if you're right next to one, you'd have to look up straight into the sky to see its face. And besides being absurdly large, another interesting trait about this Brontothere that was a bit unique was its horn, as it had evolved into one large structure that more resembled a battering ram than anything else. And this originally led to the notion that, like a ram, the Embolotherium would use this structure to bash not only any threats, but also each other during interspecific competition. However,
love me some prehistoric mammals. We're learning a lot today. I have never heard about any of these, so. Well, thank you for the super chat. Thank you. Yeah, we're learning today.
However, when actually analyzing their rams, paleontologists noted that compared to relatives, theirs was actually much thinner and hollower, leading to the new idea that they weren't used as weapons, but rather means to communicate, possibly even helping to resonate certain sounds, whilst their absolutely gigantic size was likely more than enough defense by its lonesome. So there you have it, one obscure mammalian giant. But funny enough, the Embolotherium, or even the Brontotheres as a whole, are not the only ones. There are others. And if we switch specifically to the realm of carnivores, one that is quite shocking is a species that actually has a decent shot at the title for the largest mammalian predator of all time. Well, that isn't a whale. And this mystery animal is somewhat tied to what I consider an actual living obscure giant, and that would be walruses. Now obviously most people have heard of walruses, I'd hope at least, but many don't know just how big they truly are. And so, to put their size into perspective, large males are often twice or 3 times the size of freaking polar bears, and have megatusks that can each measure up to 100 centimeters or 3.3 feet long. And yet, despite being this massive, living walruses are actually pretty much the littlest of bros, so you could say, as in reality, there was a much larger, now extinct kind of walrus that once thrived, which didn't just outsize extinct walruses, but again is also a contender for the largest carnivoran to ever live. And its name, Pontolis Magnus.
Magnus mentioned? Yeah, so of course the biggest mammal would be a carnivore, poggies.
To find this beast, you'd have to travel back to the Miocene period some 12 million.
Oh my gosh, and they bite ankles. 3 feet shows 5 hands. Look, math is hard, Pen, okay? It's very difficult. 2 cots worth of tusk. Okay, band, Alan, hello.
Years ago, a time when prehistoric oceans in general were much scarier than current, housing not only iconic extinct giants such as the Megalodon, but also similarly sized predatory whales that belonged to the Physeteroidea, amongst others. And included in these others was our protagonist, the Pontolis Magnus, which was an absolute giant in its own right, having a body that extended for over 4 meters or 13 feet long, while also weighing up to 4 tons, the same as a male Asian elephant, whilst the larger specimens might have even exceeded this. However, let me emphasize, this was not an elephant, but rather a walrus, a 4-ton freaking walrus. Additionally, while Asian elephants like their greens, Pontolis Magnus was pretty much Ron Swanson, meat only, having been an active predator. Yet, as opposed to living
I understood the Ron Swanson reference, poggies.
Walruses that have their tusks, the Pontolis actually lack these features, having traded them out for a Titanic skull that was twice the size of the head of extant walruses. And within the Pontolis skull, you would have found them filled with large, powerful teeth that were designed to pierce and crush megafaunal prey. So, this is all to say that Pontolis Magnus was one pinniped that might have taken a very unwelcome interest to a human, assuming obviously if we had been around during its heyday. And if the Pontolis Magnus was still alive, it probably would be an actual problem, as unlike extant walruses that inhabit more remote regions of the world, the Magnus preferred areas that today are quite densely populated, having been found mainly along the western coast of the US, from California all the way up to Oregon. And in these areas, it's thought that it likely hunted other pinnipeds, such as seals, while crabs, birds, smaller cetaceans, large fish, including, by the way, megalodon pups, and possibly members of the only extinct marine order, the Desmostillions, who I've actually made a video about. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. And definitely do not think that just because it was chunky, that you would have been able to outswim this creature. Because remember, the walrus also looks like it wouldn't swim.
To be fair, I don't think I can outswim anything in the ocean, okay?
That well. And yet, despite appearing morbidly obese, are capable of swimming in bursts up to 35 kilometers per hour or 22 miles per hour, which is more than 3 times faster than Michael Phelps at his highest recorded swim speed, and quicker than the average person can sprint. And we're not talking about Jesus, so on land that is. And so, it's animals like the Pontolis Magnus who really reinforce the idea that large open expanses of water, i.e. seas and oceans, are no bueno. However, freshwater also has harbored its fair share of obscure giants. Multiple, in fact.
Walruses are goobers and massive trolls, but you don't want to get in their way or spook them. I would never upset any animal on purpose. Biggest animal ever is a carnivore that just eats krill, being the blue whale. Yeah, we like whales. Whales are a little funky. Oh, he fast? He's you know, even though he's built like a beef Wellington, he kind of goes really fast, yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen the show River Monsters? And one prehistoric fish that exemplifies this point pretty well is the Rhizodus. Now, I would say this creature somewhat teeters on the line between obscure and somewhat known. However, its case is still pretty interesting, as we are talking about a predatory freshwater fish that was larger than a freaking great white, and not, I repeat, not a shark. Instead, it was a, wait for it, Rhizodont, a group of lobe-finned fish of which the Rhizodus was the largest member, and by a decent margin at that, with some specimens of this giant fish apparently measuring up to 7 meters or 23 feet long, while weighing potentially 1.5 tons, making it a contender for the largest freshwater fish of all time. And perhaps not surprisingly, it was during the Carboniferous, the age of amphibians and creepy crawlies, when this fish lived, inhabiting the dense woodlogged rivers and streams of North America, England, and Russia. And given its size, it likely hunted fair-sized fish and tetrapods, and would have done so with the help of some pretty gnarly teeth, as each Rhizodus came equipped with enlarged tusks or fang-like teeth.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a denser version of an eel. We can just make a sea moth to swim faster. True, but do we really want to build a sea moth? But yeah, beef Wellington with an engine. Real. Seems like historic times followed the same rules today. Just don't go outside. Easy. See, just don't go outside. You'll be good.
Could grow to be longer than the tooth of a literal T-Rex, and imply that instead of being limited to swallowing animals whole, the Rhizodus could absolutely attack, kill, and then rip prey apart into more bite-sized bites. And just to make this giant even scarier, paleontologists noticed that its frontal fins were, in fact, even more developed and powerful than its back ones, leading to the notion that even on the water edge, you would not be totally safe. With the idea being that much like a crocodile or alligator, the Rhizodus could actually lunge at animals along the shoreline in surprise attacks. So, one second you're looking at your beautiful reflection in the water, and then the next there's a face as big as your body gobbling you up. Yeah. So, just one more thing that makes the Carboniferous an absolute nope for me. However, this was not the only time where freshwater harbored forgotten giants, as if you traveled to the Cretaceous, you would have found an even lesser known animal that was just as, or possibly even bigger than the Rhizodus, and that would be the Mawsonia. Statistically, chances are you've never heard this guy before, but you might know the group of fish it belongs to. The coelacanths, who made some
I was gonna say it looks like a coelacanth, but I thought that sounded dumb. Oh my gosh, okay. Poggers.
A few years back for quote-unquote reappearing after having been extinct since the late Cretaceous. And while we obviously know that it is now wrong to have called this group extinct, it is still accurate to say they were better off during the Cretaceous, as along with being more diverse, they were also more widespread. And the Mawsonia in particular is known to have come from both brackish and freshwater rivers found throughout South America, Eastern North America, and Africa, where it actually coexisted with the infamous.
Never doubt yourself, Cod. I don't have a lot of knowledge about things that I can remember that I keep in there. I literally was like, yeah, Pokemon looks like Relicanth. Rom had the same brain.
Miss Spinosaurus, who statistically you are likely to know, and was one of the largest theropods to ever live. However, we're obviously here for the fish, not the dinosaur.
He's pogging, okay.
And while it wasn't as big as the Spino, the Mawsonia was still giant. measuring up to 5.48 meters, or nearly 18 feet long, which is longer than the average giraffe is tall. And while this is obviously not as long as the Rhizodus, what might have given Mawsonia the edge in sheer size was its weight. As opposed to the former, Mawsonia was much thicker all around, and the largest specimens might have cracked 2 tons. And not to mention that some speculate that given the size variation seen in coelacanths today, a 6-meter or nearly 20-footer might be out there too. And so this all begs the question of what is a coelacanth that weighs more than 2 polar bears smashed together eat? Weighs
more than 2 polar bears, okay. Well, I hope they don't eat cheeseburgers. Think of the sushi, that's a lot of sushi you'd have to eat in one day.
And the answer is, we aren't so sure. As based on recovered teeth, it's possible this fish had a preference for some crunchy texture, being duraphagous and eating hard-shelled animals such as large crabs, snails, and more. But then there's the bit more unnerving idea that Mawsonia fed like a Goliath grouper, which basically means it was an oversized Kirby, using powerful suction to gobble up pretty much anything that fit in its mouth. And considering that the much smaller groupers have been documented vacuuming up 5-foot sharks.
Well, that's terrifying. Okay, continue.
Sharks, I shudder to imagine what would happen if a person had swum too close to the Mawsonia. So perhaps just best to stay far away. And ultimately, the Mawsonia wasn't the only relatively unknown giant from its environment. There were plenty more where that came from. And so this is all to say that while we all have our fan favorites when it comes to giant prehistoric animals, they certainly were not the only ones. And if this video gets enough likes, there will certainly be a part 2. Thanks for watching, and until next time on Extinctzoo.
Well, alright then. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have any recommendations for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comments below.